You can't keep getting away with it! You can't keep getting away with it!
Welcome to God is Open. I'm your host, Christopher Fisher, and I got John Fisher, our resident PhD, on the program.
Hi, how's it going?
It's a good day. We are going to be talking about Tyler Vela, and you had no idea who this guy is.
Not really. I like it. The name sounds familiar, but I haven't given it much passing thought if I have.
Right. And you tried to Google him, and he's not the top hit on his own.
Apparently his own website is number 6 for himself.
Right.
And interestingly, number 2 is Idol Killer. So good job, Idol Killer.
It's so funny. So we're not actually going to be reviewing him directly, because that would be tedious and we'd have to gouge our eyes out. So this is an individual who I first met when I was on God is Open, and Irenic Pelagian came on and said, "Hey, come help me argue on this website. These people are saying Calvin did not murder Servetus." And I was like, okay, I got my whole podcast on it, like 12 different points of that are pretty irrefutable about the situation and circumstance. And so I'm like, okay, have you posted this to them? Yeah, they're not dealing with it. So I jumped on there and I posted that big list there. And he's like, no, you don't understand the context. Here, listen to my podcast on it. I'm listening to his podcast. It's like none of my points are being refuted. It's like, which point is being refuted? They thought like somehow if they give a holistic picture, that all my points disappear. It's like, which specific points of mine are false? And so I eventually got banned on that forum, on that thread, just arguing the historical reality of Calvin murdered Servetus.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very good litmus test to see how honest the Calvinist that you're dealing with is, whether or not he'll admit it. It's like Calvin could be right about theology and still have done bad things, but to just lie about it and then try to change the situation.
The reality is, it's more of a cult. They have a cult-like leader with a an inspirational message that they want, and that inspirational message is perfection. That's really what they're thinking, is perfection. God is perfection, and Calvin is the guy who explains it. And so if Calvin himself is evil, it casts asperities on their cult leader, then they feel it internally.
Yeah, so actually one of the comments to this atheist kid says Tyler Vela should go back to Christianity. So Tyler Vela was a Calvinist podcaster, and he decided to convert to atheism. I don't know, after he had problems with the evil, something like that. I haven't talked about him personally since his conversion, because it's like low-hanging fruit. It feels like you're like torturing like a Down syndrome kid or something like that. But I think this video actually has some interesting points, because you have an atheist philosopher trying to interact with what would be a classical theist in Tyler Vela. And so you have an atheist trying to come to terms with the language that's used, the misdirection, some of the euphemisms that are used, and trying to call these people out, these classical theists, on their double talk. He converted to philosophical theism, the provisionist perspective said. And so this guy's
isn't that what you literally tell all Calvinists to do? You're like, why don't you just convert to Platonism? Just be honest.
Yeah, and so it's funny, because after he did that, I was like, I told some Calvinists, I told the guy to do it, and he did it. It was like, and they're like, you need to post proof that you're the one who converted him there. It's like, what are we doing? But here's a presumable atheist,
obviously.
This presumable atheist named Jeremy. The Calvinistic view on God is an extension of Hinduism, and Gnosticism via Augustine is also very propositional, so it tends to be aggressive. And I think that does summarize Calvinist mentality. It's very propositional. So I think what he means by that is it just makes a bunch of claims And then instead of like supporting the claims, it just aggressively insists on those claims being true.
Yeah.
And so I think that is the root of Calvinism. They don't actually have arguments. And I think the guy we're talking about today, the Spoon Vela, he talks about his deconversion and how the Bible just doesn't have the God that he had in mind. It's one of his reasons for deconversion.
Do you feel like maybe you did have an influence that he's trying to like think through your points and he doesn't have an answer?
That it's obvious that it's I don't know how much the guy listened to me
specifically,
but the guy's
but
listening to people like Michael Heiser, who he cited as one of his influences. It's like the Bible just doesn't line up with this crazy notion. It's like they're taking an ancient Israelite text and they're trying to fit it into Platonistic theology about God. It just doesn't fit, and so it's going to collapse on itself.
Like a hyper reaction to the Greek gods, right?
Yeah.
It's like I mean, why don't I take Confucianism and try to force it into Christianity somehow? It's like it doesn't make sense.
I got double banned by Vela. I got banned by him a lot. Like I was on a Discord with him, and he's the most dishonest person that I've ever interacted with. Like the most intellectually bankrupt and dishonest. And so eventually, I made like a GIF of him, like spazzing out in a autistic rage. And so I got kicked off his Discord for that. So I don't blame him for kicking me for that, but I don't even know if it's his Discord, probably someone else's. But this atheist guy, Danny, and he looks like a little kid, but apparently he's a graduate student or something and a teacher.
I'm old enough that that's still a little kid. I'm sorry.
Right. And so this Danny, I don't know anything about Danny except for he hates Tyler Vela. And so, I need to edit the title of this and put not safe for work because our Danny friend uses not safe for work language. This is fair warning to anyone under the age of, 12 watching. And so we'll go ahead and play him.
Delete them. Now he may not, but I wanted to review this and look, when I say Tyler should go back to Christianity, for two reasons. Number one, there are good things that you can learn from Christianity and not be an asshole, right? Turn the other cheek, all that kind of thing, right? So I think Tyler has a lot to learn from that side of Christianity. Also, as you'll see,
he didn't learn that from Christianity yet, though.
Oh no, he's the most disingenuous person you'll ever engage with. Yeah. He won't admit a single point, even when he's lived like multiple years of a lie, believing your arguments, but pretend arguing against them. So we're dealing with like the low of the low.
Tyler holds me responsible for the iniquities of some of the people I know / friends. And that's very Christian-like. So he kind of belongs to the dark side of Christianity as well. So he should just go back to Christianity. I mean, like, at least be like what are those cultural Christians? Like, you can you're totally in line with the values. I'm about to expose that. So the video that I had,
so I did put a poll once on God is Open. It's like, who would you rather be stuck in a bunker with? Like a cage stage Calvinist or a new wave atheist, one of those new atheist guys. And surprisingly, everyone was picking the atheists. I was like, I would not want to be stuck in a bunker with one of these new atheists. They tend to be like terrible. I don't know anything about Danny, so he might be one of these new atheist types or not. But that sounds terrible to me. I'd much rather take like the revolver, do some Russian roulette and try to get a good Calvinist that you could talk to or something. But that's interesting. So who would you rather be stuck in a bunker with for like nuclear war, a new atheist or a stage cage Calvinist?
Like
cage stage Calvinist.
There's a bunch of people who are atheists but don't identify as new atheists because it doesn't like drive their mentality. The only people who are identifying as new atheists are the militant ones, which is why they're so terrible. Yeah, so obviously I think it's easier to like being in a bunker with a radical Calvinist is better just because there is some amount of
sanity.
framework. There's a
There's
framework.
sanity.
You could put together like, okay, but the Bible says don't kill me, something like that, right? You can start arguing from a common ground, from something you know that he's working from, whereas an atheist could be as malicious and bitter as he wants. And if he's a new age one, he's a militant one, right?
Yeah, he's going to have this weird set of values, and he's just going to be off the wall crazy.
Yeah.
Trump derangement syndrome times 10.
Yeah, but I've also looked into like there's basically, if you try to look at personality types, and probably there's some sort of genetic basis for it, and then what drives people to be is sort of like these causing people who are always fighting for something. They tend to be very neurotic, right? And so like one of the reasons you can't really reason with them, and that you can't really hold a dialogue, and they're not going to be very like everything's going to break down, is because they're going to find some reason to break it down. Like it's just in their personality to do that.
Yeah, I'm going to fight back. If you take the chance with the Calvinist, he actually might have some life skills like building something with wood and carpentry or plumbing. The new atheist, you're not going you're going to have anime knowledge, maybe. Like knowing about Attack on Titan character and plot developments. Yeah, I don't know.
I'll post it in the description. I'm not going to review the video, but it was a open mic that I had yesterday, and I criticized Tyler for his conversation with me. Here it is. All right, so this is the video. Let me put hide chat. Okay, so this is the video. You can rewatch the exchange, and I'll post the video. So there's like 3 videos here. There's the review of the video, and there's the video on Tyler's channel. I'll post all of them.
And now we got a video of his.
Yeah, it's super Inception.
And yeah, I think he was really unfair. I think it was really obtuse, and I think he said a lot of stupid things. Okay, and then the title of the video is Tyler Vela is annoying. I don't remember what else I've called him. I probably called him other names, but I don't think I called him a moron at some point in the comments, but I wonder if this is what he's talking about when he says that I'm name calling. So let's go over these comments. How do you get rid of this shit on the side, guys? I don't want to see that.
Idle Killer's here. He says, oh boy, more Vela. Why? How many videos have I ever done about the spoon? Like 2? I don't know. This might be my second one ever. And so I think I've been very good at never mentioning his name ever. And he says, why? We've already discussed this for you latecomers, because we have an atheist here that interacts with a classical theist and is confused and starts pointing out the double talk, the double language.
This. I just want to see the comments. Like, you see all the suggestions? How do you get rid of that? I don't know. All right. Wow. Okay, so he says nothing like.
GMW says, what does the spoon mean? The spoon is not sharp. So in a knife drawer, you don't want to be a spoon. And so it's kind of a derogatory term for someone whose IQ is not quite the highest.
Good old-fashioned name calling and wanting to show one is reasonable, right? What does that even mean? It's okay. You'll hopefully grow out of the ego one day, my friend. Best. He wishes me best. Okay. So
okay, so here you have Tyler Vela being condescending towards someone, and I don't know. Phil's not taking it very well. Did you hear the comment, or should we rewind?
I didn't hear the comment.
Okay, we'll rewind just a little bit. He's going to read the comment.
How do you get rid of that? I don't know. All right. Wow. Okay, so he says nothing like good old-fashioned name calling and wanting to show one is reasonable, right? What does that even mean? It's okay. You'll hopefully grow out of the ego one day, my friend.
Okay, so there's this weird conception that someone can't be genuinely name called. Like if someone's really stupid, you can't say you're an idiot. Like,
yeah.
Like, what am I doing here talking to you? You're literally an idiot. Why am I wasting my time? And they'll say, "Oh, look at that! I won the argument because you have resorted to name calling." I don't have any other options. There's no talking. We can't have a conversation.
Well, that's kind of all they're doing anyway. They're saying, "Oh, well, like, you're incapable of having an argument because like you're just making ad hominems, right?" And so that therefore I win the argument. But what they're kind of doing is saying, "Well, you're not capable of having an argument too, therefore I win," right? So what happens is that they're trying to win the rhetorical fight by calling you dumb or irresponsible without actually trying to use like the dumb words. They try to say it in a more sophisticated way, but they're still saying the same thing. All you're doing is engaging in a rhetorical fight at this point, and they think they're winning it by declaring that they're the ones who aren't doing it.
Right, which is funny in the case of Vela, because he points out here that Vela name calls all the time. He's just a complete hypocrite. And this is his value system. That's one thing that I think is really funny with interacting with people. You interact with them, and if you say something like without tact, or if you say something or you call them stupid or something, they're like, "That's not very Christ-like about for you to do. I thought you were a Christian. I thought you claimed to be a Christian." It's like, where in this conversation did I make any claims about are we having the same conversation? They're like, what standards do you think that I've introduced to this that I'm violating? It's like, I can't. You start interacting with people and it all turns personal. They'll ignore your arguments and they'll just start attacking other random things. Like this little outrage mob. It's like, I don't care about your guys' feelings. I just don't do it.
Best. He wishes me best. Okay. So so I was surprised because I've seen this guy name call too, right? So, and he's much older than I am. So per his own standard, he hasn't grown up, right? So I call him out on that, right? I say, maybe you'll grow out of it in your 50s, because I was assuming he's in his 40s. He has kids and he's been married.
Maybe.
I've seen you name call within the last couple of years. What a fucking hypocrite. Check yourself. Let me know when you've grown up. Okay. And then he says, he denies it essentially. Right? I mean, this is an implicit denial. Who have I name called? Citation of evidence, please. The idea is that he's either knows that he's name calling, giving me a hard time about the accusation, or he's just forgotten. So this is a video. It's quite hilarious of when Tyler was a Christian. He debated some people on Discord, and some of them were my friends. He called Jack Angstrike, a friend of mine, Jack Anisberger.
So I think the biggest sin in this is the utter lack of cleverness in this name calling. I don't think Vela has done any justice. Yeah, with it's not like a Trump name calling. It's not like
that's my point. It's all rhetoric. They're all rhetorical attacks, and so it's just a matter of who's most clever about how you go about pushing that rhetoric. You could say, "Oh, he's a poopy head," and people look more negatively at you for saying poopy head instead of saying something that seems like it's not really insulting. Like you seem like you're being insightful by saying, "Oh, well, he just blusters through everything." That's still calling them kind of like a silly person, right? But it's a more sophisticated type of rhetoric, and then the most sophisticated usually wins. Like, you look at a lot of the new atheist arguments, and a lot of them are just sophisticated rhetoric of calling the other person a nasty person, right?
Yeah, it's an appeal to, it's like, oh, if you were a real Christian, you would do this.
Yeah,
or Christians are such bad people. Oh, do you know that there's slavery in the Bible? Isn't that so bad? Oh, yeah. Like, okay, I guess. I don't know.
This was like a couple of years.
I guess the second oldest profession within human history is so terrible to be in the Bible. I guess. I don't know.
Years ago. Okay. And in the video, it's hilarious. He says that it's not name calling. Right. So just look at the comments here, by the way, this video. He apologizes here. But as I said, this is 2 years ago. Okay. I need to reshare this 1 second. I need to reshare it. I noticed that it did not. It's only sharing a tab. So let me share the window. All right. So this was the video where he called Jack Anisberger. Okay. And he says, but as I said,
Hold on.
this is 2 years ago. Okay.
So Tyler Vela's response is the same he gave to you. He's like, with the broader context, you will understand. Is that like his go-to argument?
It's really bad. So hopefully we'll get pretty quickly here to the classical theism aspect rather than the personality aspect.
Okay.
I'm sorry for how I responded to Jack and his crew. Why is he sorry? Could it be because you were name calling? Right? Have you grown up?
Okay, I'm gonna fast forward a little bit.
Career. What happens if I wasn't friends with Jack Hangstrike? Well, so Tyler, grow up. And I'm using your own standard because I think it's okay to name call in certain situations.
Okay, so I did want to talk about name calling. Yes, I do think it's okay to name call in certain situations.
Yep.
Sometimes there's no recourse. Sometimes you got nothing to benefit from. I got a really great clip where it's in one of the presidential debates for Trump, and I think it's Jeb Bush. And Jeb Bush is like, you can't name call your way to your presidency, and then it does it Always Sunny in the Philadelphia clip or something like that. Like,
oh yeah,
Trump name calls his way to the presidency.
What he did.
Like, yeah, you can.
Apparently, yes.
It's actually very effective in certain circumstances. You just have to know how and when and how to employ it. Dealing with people, here's a problem that's very particular among Christians and the right, is that they interact with people thinking that the other person is going to be intellectually honest. They care about principles and intellectual rigor. There's a Jon Stewart clip where Jon Stewart just interviews some guy about guns, and he's trying to get him caught up in this hypocrisy stuff, and the guy's trying to explain concepts to Jon Stewart, and Jon Stewart's looking for like gotchas. You're not dealing with someone who wants to learn and interact and talk about concepts. You're looking at someone who wants to use and abuse you. And so you can't be interacting the same way. That's a huge mistake, is to assume that the person you're interacting with you has the same value set as yours.
Well, I think, one of the fundamental things about Christianity is it points out that people are like fundamentally, like their hearts tend towards evil, right? So you ask, there's these questions people ask, like, are people fundamentally good or fundamentally evil? And like my personal conception is they sort of just tend to follow the path of least resistance, whatever is easiest for them. And that can often be very evil. But if you just begin from a perspective that people are fundamentally evil, then you won't act in this high trust manner where you would just assume that if you make the argument hard enough, we're all just come to a common understanding. You should just expect that they're going to be brutal, unless like they're forced into something else, right?
Except for Christians don't seem to have internalized that lesson.
Yeah.
And so they get walked all over.
Modern day Christians haven't. I think they did internalize it at one point in history.
Yeah, they got psyoped into believing all these little trite things like separation of church and state, non-intervention, and to just let everyone do their own things. And now you got child drag shows going on everywhere. Congratulations, modern Christianity.
Child mutilation going on everywhere.
Yeah, the chemical castration of children is what you get. With modern passive, be nice to everyone. Here's another thing. So he's talking about this. You don't take advice how to convert people from people who hate you.
Yeah. Like
there's a quote by Cernovich where he's talking to a guy about he's like, well, the Republicans should do this, this, and this if they want to attract voters like me. And then Cernovich is like, have you ever voted Republican? And the guy laughed, and he laughed. And he's like, no, he never voted Republican in his life. It's like, you're not going to be attracted. You're not interacting in good faith. You're giving people terrible advice that is not going to work. It's not going to actually attract more votes. Yeah. It's a losing strategy to be taking advice from these people who hate you. They don't care about intellectual principles. You're not doing anything. You're watering down your message. You're losing your core audience, and you're compromising and losing your values. Then you end up with chemical castration of children. And so
Like, you're a moron. That's name calling, right? Because you are a moron, right? You need to be called out, right? So I don't have a problem with name calling, but if you have a problem with name calling, you have a problem with your own character, not just mine. Okay. So this is what I respond. Well, what does this have to do with whether you were name calling, right? You admit that you did? I mean, like, it looks like he already knew and he was just giving me a
Yeah, you want to go to his inconsistencies?
Yeah.
He might have deleted it. Let me see if I can find. Of course, it could also be YouTube, so I'm not so quick.
Okay, so now he's talking about Tyler Vela, and he has a comment that God's beliefs are not subjective. God's beliefs and opinions are not subjective. Something like that. He's able to find the quote later in this, so maybe we could jump forward to find. He has to go into YouTube Studio or something to find it. But that's one thing about YouTube is that YouTube likes to delete and hide comments. And so if someone comments on one of my videos, YouTube will, without notifying me, without notifying the person, they'll just delete or hide or shadow ban comments, and they'll disappear into the ether. And it's not like your comments getting deleted or something like that, but it doesn't mean your comments not getting deleted by something or someone's deleting it. So he's going through here trying to see if Tyler Vela deleted his own comment or not. It turns out Tyler Vela didn't. YouTube's just hiding it. So we'll go back.
Aren't subjective. Okay. So, and then he says, well, I remember when I was like you, when I was a philosophy undergrad, and I had to, like, you know, I remember the ego and all of that, Danny. So good luck, you know, basically telling me to grow up again. Well, first of all, I'm not a philosophy undergrad, right? I got my undergraduate degree in philosophy, and I have my master's degree in philosophy, and I'm a college instructor for philosophy. So that, I don't know where that came from, right? But maybe he's just assuming my age, which is okay. But at the same time, I'm no undergrad, okay? And I point that out. Okay, so this is what he says here. I didn't say there were objective beliefs unless it slipped out of tongue. Remember, I don't think God has beliefs. Okay, so this is, again, I mean, if God has no beliefs, he's not a person, right?
So yeah, this Danny, he gets it. If God doesn't have beliefs, God is not a person. And so,
well, yeah, the definitions of words always change when you're talking about God, though, don't they?
right. And so I don't think classical theist Vela would say that God is a person.
Well, he would just redefine the word person, right? Because he's still going to say, you know, three persons, one God, right?
Right. He's not going to
redefine person to be whatever he feels like.
It's not going to be person like you and me, how we use the word.
Exactly.
And so we have Danny here. Danny seems to be unfamiliar with classical simplicity and timelessness and immutability and ineffability, these concepts. And now he's dealing with.
You think he's unfamiliar with that? Why?
Yeah, because you hear him. He's trying to figure this out. He's like, wait, if that's true, then God's not a person.
I mean, it doesn't sound like he's just discovered that. I think he's just pointing it out in a different. Prove to me that he doesn't actually.
And
understand.
if God doesn't have beliefs, see, there can't be stances. Stances are kind of belief, right? So, but anyway, but hey, you're the expert here. I never claimed to be an expert. I specifically said that I teach college level philosophy. Now, that doesn't make me an expert. Teachers generally aren't experts. They know enough material to teach. Their profession is teaching. It's not being a scholar. There's a difference between being a scholar and being a teacher.
This is a meaningless line, but it's probably important for him where he's at in his life.
Right. Well, it's better than these people who have degrees and then claim that they're the expert in everything and that they're right and you're wrong by virtue of them having that degree.
Okay. So maybe that's what he's afraid of projecting, that, you know, if he actually got a PhD, now he's an expert or something.
I actually like Danny for this because he's right that a lot of times you deal with people with degrees, and degrees are just like broad things that you just put in enough time, you're going to get it. You don't have to be fluent in the things that you're getting degrees in.
Well, also having received a degree and understanding what's happened, one, they're watered down nowadays. So a lot of people are not really fluent, but then they have these catch-all titles. And two, often you spend only a little bit of time on any given subject. So your expertise, if it's a subject that's narrow enough, is just about the same as if you took a little bit of a course on it or something, right? Like a lot of times this expertise doesn't actually account for as much as people say it does, if you actually understood how much work went into it. And it's one of the reasons there is imposter syndrome rampant all over, is that when after people go through the experience, they're like, how did that make me an expert? Because it actually doesn't.
Yeah, the example I use is when I was dealing with some philosophy majors, and I said, "Yeah, Plato's a monotheist," and they start trying to mock me and ridicule me. Oh, we got philosophy degrees. Look here in this book, and look here in this book, and where he talks about the gods. I said, "Yeah, who's speaking that quote? These are dialogues. What's the name speaking it? Is it Plato?" And they got real mad. They're like, "Oh, you just don't understand." Oh, sure. Thanks. Okay, thank you. Brilliant scholar, educated person with degree. You're going to tell me, and then you're going to tell all the Platonists who claimed that Plato was a monotheist, people like Justin Martyr, people, I think maybe Origen's another one who talked about these guys are all monotheists. In the sense that even in Celsus and dealing with Christianity, he's like, you guys basically believe the same thing that we do. Our gods, our deities are the same as your angels. And then you got it like the head deity. It kind of works the same. He's like, I don't know why we're quibbling over little titles and things like that. But yeah, that's my experience. So I do appreciate him he's just throwing his degree out just to prove a point about what the Spoon has claimed, rather than to boost his own credibility. He's just saying these are the degrees, and this is what you're talking about. You're incorrect here. So I do appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think this whole argument is a rabbit trail. In all honesty, it's irrelevant.
It is irrelevant.
I am no scholar. I can learn from a lot of people that that have looked into the material. In fact, there are probably other things that Tyler has looked into that I could learn from him, just not in this domain, right? At least in like theology or whatever, right? So I am no expert. I just teach.
Too bad he thinks
okay?
that. But maybe he's being generous.
But calling me an expert here is just ridiculous. It's just a testament to his sarcasm and his absolute asshole.
I was dealing with it's like an atheist guy or something, or one of these people who hate me. And they're like, you claim to be an expert on Platonism. I'm like, what? Like, is this a different conversation I had with you in which I made like all these claims? My work, what I try to do is I try to quote direct sources so people could come to their own conclusions. I tend not to make personal claims. And so it's always baffling when people are like, this Vela thing. You're the expert here.
Because what happens is what Vela does is that you will quote something, and then they'll declare you must know the larger context, and then they'll say you have to be an expert to know the larger context because you have to spend a lot of time studying this, and if you haven't done that, then you don't know the true context.
Assholery. Okay. So I basically say this, right? First, you're not my student. You're a moron on the internet. There's where I think he is. Okay. Second, never said he was an expert. Third, he gave this dichotomy of subjective and objective. And I say that if God doesn't have beliefs, then he's not a person. He doesn't have a point of view. Because views, to be a point of view is a view. If you have views, and you have views, you have beliefs. So if you have no beliefs, you have no views. And if you have no views, you have no point of view. And if you don't have a point of view, you're not a person. You're not an agent. Right? So I have not read this comment. So let's see what we've seen here.
Yeah, and so I think that's fair. I think that might be a valid definition of person, is having a unique point of view or perspective or opinions. And so in that definition, God would not be a person. And that is
Calvinist definition.
In the Calvinist metaphysics, God is not a person.
Yeah.
God is a facet of the universe, like a divine calculation,
like the force or something.
Like a source code inject, or the whole code itself is what God would be equated to, like in the Matrix. Maybe he is the code of the Matrix, like a pantheism, exactly. And so I think he does have a point here.
Guys, I'm going to read through the comments in a second. I'm just really focused on what's going on here. Again, for I think the fourth time, I don't think God has beliefs. I addressed that here, Tyler. Okay. If you think God doesn't have beliefs, right? So I understand that you might believe that. We use analogical language. Okay, so this bullshit about speaking analogically, that means there's a common property. So
okay,
what is the
look at that. Look at that. That's great. That's great.
You like instantly know.
Danny's great. If
Yeah.
we're speaking analogically, there has to be two conceptual domains that overlap, and there has to be a point at which they connect. Danny gets it. Danny gets it.
common property, Tyler, between analogical God belief and human belief? What is the common property? Good luck on that question, right? You're going to try to wiggle out saying that it's an analogy between God belief and human belief, but you're not going to have a good answer for what the common.
So Calvin was probably more consistent than some Calvinists who talk about analogical language. To Calvin, God is doing baby talk, like talking gaga nonsense.
Literally talking nonsense because we can't understand anything.
Right, because nothing in language is going to map up to
what
who
Calvin
God is.
Even though Calvin knows who God is.
Yeah, Calvin could conceptualize it, but everyone else gets baby talk, and that's why everything's written in baby talk. But he could transcend. He's got the gnosis. He's got the special enlightening that brings him to the next level of enlightenment. He's there.
Common properties are there between human belief and God belief, such that they're analogous. Okay, you're verging on trolling. Since I've said this repeatedly, again, I've addressed it. You just don't read. You didn't read all of my comment, and the edit came in time before you respond. Well, you need to look at the edit. It could be. Let me give you credit here, Tyler.
Okay, so he is giving him a little credit, and it is a very good practice when you edit a comment on social media to put a little tag like "this is a later edition," so people don't make the other person into having bad motives. Like you don't retcon your conversation to make it look like different things were said. I like how the Facebook functions. The threads, they function by showing prior edits, even though opening posts they don't show prior edits. And so sometimes I'll post like really spicy memes that people like freak out over, and then I'll flip them with like Minions memes, and I'll be like, "What's your problem with this meme?" And there's no history. It's like, and everyone will think, "Oh, that's led to some pretty hilarious situations." But it is a good practice to, when you edit your comment, note the edits, and so people they don't retcon the conversation in their own mind when reviewing it.
Might have not read my edit because I know that you've acknowledged that. Okay, so I'll give you credit there. Maybe you didn't see. You're verging on troll. Okay, lol. I know you need to strawman me to make your narrative work. I'm saying some blatant contradiction. Please stated that there's a problem, friend. This is all just, you're the one who is annoyed. I was wondering why this kid is so angry about things I'm not even saying. Look, you said you deleted your comment. It looks like. I'm going to dig up this comment maybe in a second. But you said that God's beliefs aren't subjective. When you say God's beliefs aren't subjective, that's the implication there. There's no implication that therefore you believe that God doesn't have beliefs. Right? If I say the apple is not red, then the apple is another color. That means there's still an apple. Okay. So I've got to dig for this now. Let me look at the
he does find it. So
YouTube studio.
We'll jump forward to where he finds this.
Because they have beliefs and opinions in the subject. That's accurate. God, on classical theism, doesn't have beliefs and opinions in the subjective sense. You see this?
Okay, so here's an atheist. He comes across a classical theist, and the classical theist is using euphemistic language to sell their actual views in a more palpable sense. Like God doesn't have beliefs and opinions in the subjective sense, or in the objective sense either, Tyler Vela. You forgot that part because that doesn't sound good. That's why.
Well, did he say that God has objective beliefs, or was that just Danny's interpretation?
No, it's the implication.
This is his quote. This is his quote.
This is his quote.
Okay.
And so it's technical. Like if you say that my car's not red, people are gonna think you have a car. It's just gonna be like, okay, yeah, you got a car that's some other color. And if you didn't have a car, you're probably lying to the person. You're misleading them pretty bad, even though technically you're not lying. Even technical sleights of hand to mislead people are in fact lies. And so this type of language, when you're not actually describing the actually held position, it's like weasel language. You're trying to sell your view that you don't actually hold. And so in Calvinism, like Calvinists won't like to say it, but God doesn't think, right? God doesn't have parts, and God doesn't have predicates.
God to think suggests temporality, right?
Yeah. Yep. And God doesn't respond to prayer. These are phrases that they believe, but they're all unwilling to say. Oh, one of my favorite is, this gets them all riled up, that the human part of Jesus was not God. And that's because in classical theism, God is simple and the human part of Jesus is compound. Therefore, the human part of Jesus can't be combined or joined or considered part of God's undivided simple substance. It's a human part. The human is inseparable. It's not. It has to be other than the divine. Two separate things, separate substances. If the human part of Jesus was divine, then God would have parts. He'd have components that would defeat all their classical theism stuff. And so they literally do.
It's a weird position because like they're taking this concept of fully God and fully man, which means that it's indistinguishable, and then you're trying to distinguish between them, right?
Yeah. So they'll say little trite sayings like, "Oh, Jesus was fully God and fully man." What they mean is the human part of Jesus was fully human, and the God part of God was fully God. That's what they mean. They don't mean that the human part of Jesus was God. That's the exact opposite of what they mean. But they will not say it. I've got maybe one or two Calvinists to ever admit that that's what they believe, but that it is in fact what they believe. And so they won't say things that they believe. And these are like things about metaphysics, like a normal person would not care about this. So it's not like trying to get someone to admit like slavery wasn't condemned in the Bible.
Because people think God is a person, right? So if you say something like the human part of Jesus was God, you're like, yeah, because God's the person that Jesus is, right?
Yeah, then like a normie Christian will be like, that means Jesus wasn't God. But God, and they'll try to do the math in their head. They use that statement, Jesus is God, in a different sense than classical theists when they say Jesus is God.
Because God is propositional for a classical theist.
Yeah. And so these are not gotcha phrases. This is just literally what they believe in metaphysics, and they won't say it. And so they'll use language like this, that, oh, he doesn't have beliefs and opinions in the subjective sense. God's knowledge has to be divinely simple. It has to be identical with all his other attributes, part of this divine whole. And so it's not, God doesn't hold propositional knowledge in classical theism. It has to be in total. It's all that is in God is God, and all of that can't be broken out into components. So it's not like God has a list of knowledge propositions in his head. It's just a sum total of it's just all one simple essence. It can't be a divisional, propositional type of knowledge that God has. And so Vela understands this and is trying to sugarcoat this or paint it in a way that's not quite accurate of what he believes. And this atheist is like, hey, what's going on here? This doesn't look right.
God doesn't have beliefs and opinions in the subjective sense. What is the implication there, Tyler? The implication is not, therefore, God doesn't have beliefs, right? Since you should take a logic class, man, right? The implication here is that if God doesn't have beliefs and opinions in the subjective sense, then he has them in the non-subjective sense, aka the objective sense. So I interpreted you correctly. Okay, you dumbass. I interpreted you correctly because we can just substitute. Look, again, I'm going to use the same. I'm going to use an example here, right? Okay, if I say, well, let me give apples. Okay, if I say something like pears are not sweet in the apple sense, that means they're sweet in a different sense, right? So you're not just saying that there are no apples, right? So maybe that was a poor example, but I think y'all get the point. This sentence does not imply your belief that God has no beliefs or opinions. It just means that you think that God has beliefs and opinions in the objective sense.
Yeah, more specifically, it implies that God has beliefs.
Right. And that's what Danny's freaking out about, because later on in the conversation, he says, I don't believe that God has beliefs. It's like, what's all that 1 in a million talk up there? I don't know.
So I correctly interpreted you. Okay. This is craziness, all right? This should not be. I mean, I would appreciate people that basically stop praising Tyler for deconverting, right?
Oh, yeah. So now he's going to criticize atheists, because atheists, like, they see someone convert from Christianity to like their position. They're like, yay, clapping. They fail to like see who it is, who's coming on over.
It sounds like he didn't even convert in the first place.
Well, yeah.
He just more formally said he didn't change his opinions, really. He's just not labeling himself a Christian anymore. Right?
Well, he's rejecting the Bible is what he's doing. So, which is, anytime I deal with these Calvinists, that's why I tell them, it's like, you have no use for the Bible. It's like, if you don't, you're arguing with them about the Bible. It's like, oh, the Bible says this. And they're like, what, blah, 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 my philosophy. And you're like, if you don't like the Bible, you could convert to, Platonism. There's nothing stopping you. I mean, go for it. I'm not getting in your way. I'm not going to like hold you up there, my friend. Go for it. And they get mad about that. That actually, it shuts down their philosophizing and ignoring the Bible, because it kind of points out that they're ignoring the text and championing their own philosophy. And so it's a pretty funny thing to do. And then, yeah, if you actually believe these things, you shouldn't be a Christian. It's probably not where your camp should be.
He's still an asshole. Okay. Now, if you still want to praise him for deconverting, I'm not going to do your thing. But if you're like me, stop praising him. Okay. And then he says, look at this, right? This is so annoying. I'm repeating. This is the fourth time I'm going to repeat this. He says that, again, why does it disappear? It just disappears. That's so annoying. So look back over here. Where is it? Okay. So he says, God unclassical doesn't have beliefs in the subjective sense. Okay, which means that God has beliefs and opinions in the objective sense. At least that's what it could imply. Perfectly fine interpretation. Then he tells me that, remember, I don't think God has beliefs. That's not clear to me, Tyler. Not clear at all.
Remember.
And then you're saying that I'm commenting you, but look,
he's retconning the conversation. He's retconning it's all retcon. It's pretending that you said something that you didn't say, and then accusing them of misrepresenting you. And I
even said, just in case, if you don't think God has beliefs, here's the argument for why that's a problem. Because then you have to reject theistic personalism, where God is a person. Okay, so I'm not trolling you, right? You're just abusing the language. I mean, you need to read over these comments. You're not thinking. Okay? Let me look at what y'all are saying here.
The freed thinker.
I missed.
He's freed from thought.
Oh man.
Yes, barely Protestant, absolutely. Yeah, you're late, Cameron. You should rewind. Dan thinks that naturalism of God is true. Yeah, that's true. You're talking about the other Dan. Yeah. Dan is not a very good reasoner at all. To be fair, classical theism, to be fair, Vela is but he has no idea. Is aping? Sorry.
Okay, so this barely Protestant guy thinks that Vela is doing like a mimic of what a classical theist believes. I don't think that that's true. And so I wonder what this barely Protestant guy would use as evidence of this. So Vela seems to be a classical theist in the classical sense.
Yeah, except if someone's calling themselves a classical theist, they're almost certainly a Christian, right? They're attaching themselves to the Bible, and Vela is no longer doing that.
Oh, no longer, but at the time of I think this conversation, he was.
Oh, this is an old conversation.
Yeah, this is old conversation. This whole thing is Tyler Vela should go back to Christianity, reviewing old interactions. Like, we do not want this guy. Please take him back Christianity. And Christianity's like, you guys go for it. You can take this one.
Yeah.
We'll take the next. I don't know.
Be clear about what you're saying here. Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I think this is going to be a short and sweet live because it's enough to expose him. Yeah, they're pretty garbage, but I wanted to make sure that it's all on video before he deletes these comments. Okay. So, anyways, go back to Christianity for two reasons. Number one, sometimes Christianity can make you a better person because you're not a good person, right? At least not toward me, right? I think if you really think about what you're doing to me, right? If then you probably think why you probably understand why I'm annoyed. Okay. The second thing is that you said over here that because I'm guilty by association, Jack Aimstrike might have done something wrong, therefore I did something wrong, or that I can't
That's a part of the video we clipped, or we skipped that, and Vela was accusing Danny of being friends with the guy who pushed an old lady once. It's like, I guess, I don't know. But it's interesting. It's interesting that he's pointing out some same things that anyone who interacts with Vela points out, that this guy is intellectual train wreck. He's dishonest. He's disingenuous. He doesn't interact in good faith. And Danny's legit confused when he's going over these comments. Like, what does this guy believe? I'm trying to have a conversation with this guy. He keeps claiming random different things at different times. He's misleading me into what he actually believes. And he's like, I'm lost. I can't follow your actual beliefs because of the things that you're saying. And he's confused, and rightly so. So, any comments about our video with Danny?
Yeah, it's a little funny to watch that he has to deal with people like this. I don't know if he understands that, like, the cult-like nature of Calvinism guarantees that there's a lot of Dannys out there, and maybe, you know, because he's made comments multiple times that, you know, you'd be better at home with as a cultural Christian because they're all like that, right? But maybe that's the kind of people he's dealing with. He's dealing with the Danny cultists, or the Tyler Vela cultists.
The Vela cultists. Yeah, it's not. He calls himself the freed thinker. It's not a thought. It's not.
Yeah, imagine that title. That's an egotistical title.
Right. It's not a worldview that encourages actual critical thinking. It's not a worldview that encourages dialogue, and you're sitting around in a smoke lounge with pipes talking about ideas and principles. It's not like that. He's never interacted like that. Maybe it is accurate because people in the real world who call themselves freed thinkers tend to do a lot of drugs, and they tend to be very vocal and aggressive and angry individuals that will attack you for saying anything at all. And that tends to be the freed thinker type.
Yeah, they're free from all social constraints, except he's not behaving any differently than when he wasn't calling himself the freed thinker, right?
Right. So maybe Christianity is not a factor in whatever Vela does. Maybe that's just who he is.
Yes.
Yeah, you're not going to change him with an ideology. He's just going to always be terrible. My wife got mad at me the other day because I was on Facebook, and so there was this rabid pro-abortion lady who's just coming out of the woodwork trying to stir things up with me. It's like I didn't invite her to talk. I wasn't like continuously tagging her. I'd post some comments and then she'd come back weeks later and post it. And one of my comments was like, like you should beg God for forgiveness or don't. I don't care. And my wife's like, why did you put that? That you don't care if you she like turns to Christianity, it becomes a Christian. It's like I literally she's not someone I want to interact with or be around. It's like, well, let that one go. Like even Jesus, it has this thing where it's like you shake the sand off your sandals when the people are rejecting. It's like you're not required to go through some sort of Herculean effort, Prometheus pushing up the stone
every ounce of your life to save and protect everyone out there. Like,
yeah, it's like
it doesn't work. It could be counterproductive and it's destructive to yourself.
Travis writes, Mormons are more polite than Calvinists. I like Mormons. They tend to be, they're the people who are going to push your car out of a ditch in a rainstorm. And so it tends to be who they are. They're very polite and they tend not to be angry, bitter individuals. And so I do agree there. But there's good Calvinists too. I mean, there's ones that you'd want over to you'd want your daughters to marry their sons and vice versa. They exist.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But they tend to not be theologically driven, right?
Well, they could be, but they tend not to be active on the internet. Internet active people. Internet is a toxic culture, and so it brings out a lot of. I think it attracts. I think there's like this thing where it's a selection biased, and so the people you're interacting with are people who self-select to go online and get in these vicious conversations. It's like I just don't got time in my life to deal with every Tom, Dick, and Joe who wants to just fight me forever on everything. It's like if someone's not showing a willingness to engage in dialogue, it's like why waste your time? Just cut them off and be done, move on. There's going to be other people, better people to interact with in the future. You don't have to spend your mental capital on dealing with people like this. The Velas of the world. That's why I don't have.
That's why this is the third video you've ever made on him.
Yeah, if I went to my channel and typed in Vela, you probably wouldn't find anything. Maybe, I don't know, but I can't recall.
Yeah, but the problem is everyone you make a rebuttal for is like that, right? Is Vela the worst of the group?
Well, there was that one guy. I don't know his name. I mocked him relentlessly. He's the one who came in and was saying I was all wrong about Platonism. So I went and reviewed one of his videos, and I was like, he's going over one of my articles, and I kept saying during the video, which one of my sentences is incorrect? Like he went over this huge review of my article saying I was wrong about everything. Like God isn't timeless because in Timaeus, he's talking about the demiurge. It's like, okay, which one of my sentences that I wrote is wrong in my article? It's like all his counterpoints were not points that were attacking anything I actually wrote. And so I did this rebuttal video, and then I kind of washed my hands of it. And then he did like a rebuttal video, and then he kept pinging me, and his followers kept pinging me. Are you going to do a counter rebuttal? It's like, I gave the guy a chance. I gave him one chance. He didn't interact with me. He didn't talk about the things that I actually said and claimed. He just wanted to talk to himself. He wanted a monologue. What am I doing? Why am I spending my time on this guy?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really funny too when people think very highly of themselves, and then you just don't respond to them. They get real angry. And so that it also is a little joy in my heart, a little bit of fire, warmth, keeps me warm on those cold nights. Making absolutely terrible people angry is one of my small joys in life. But all right, I think we probably milked that video for all it's worth. Any closing ideas or thoughts?
Yeah, not really for this one. It's a pretty simple video.
Yeah, so maybe Danny has I don't know anything about Danny. Maybe I'll try to check out one or two more of his videos. Maybe
he seems okay. Seems like he's responding appropriately to the weirdness of the internet.
Yeah, he's just like I don't get what's going on, and he's like legit like It's not like just coming out of the gate swinging. Is he's like, what is going? And he correctly identifies that he's dealing with a moron. He's not. Oh, so fantastic. So I got a little bit of chuckle out of this. And I do think it's illustrative of if a normal person starts interacting with one of these classical theists, what the heck would happen if like someone of normal intelligence who's reasonably schooled about basic philosophical principles starts interacting with a classical theist who's trying to dance around what they actually believe. I think it's a pretty good capture of that. That's why we decided to review this one.
Well, yeah, who's the group that tends to become hyper Calvinist? They're people, I think they've grown up their whole life in the church, and they're very attached to authority figures. They might have like a great pastor or something that like really insists you gotta study the classic Calvin if you really want to understand what's going on. And they're so influenced by that they have become hyperactive for that as a cause. Like I don't know of very many people who are like coming from scratch, something they haven't grown up with, who go into hyper Calvinism. I don't think that happens ever.
Right. I wonder if I put a poll on one of these Calvinist sites, how that would come back. It's like, did you convert to Calvinism or you grew up in Calvinism?
Well, no, because you got to ask if they grew up with like Christianity, right? And you should ask them what made you like fight for Calvinism. I think would be the question. First of all, did they convert into Christianity? And secondly, did they like what is it that's the trigger that says this is the important thing in Christianity that you need to fight for?
Yeah, and maybe something about their journey. It's like, oh, I started listening to MacArthur sermons all day, and then John Piper, and then I found out, oh, the Bible is Calvinistic. Like, I don't know. Maybe, probably not. We were talking just earlier. I did in fact want to point this out, that in the book of Sirach, Ben Sira, it talks about God discovering that mankind is wicked from their youth. So like after Genesis, the flood, God says, I'm never going to destroy mankind. And what's his reason? Because mankind is evil from his youth. This is God discovering this about man, saying, I'm lowering my standards. I'm not going to kill man because I figured this out about man, and we're just going to write it out. We're just going to let it play out. Ben Sira, I think it's in chapter 17, calls back to this and talks about him perceiving that man is wicked from his youth. And so as a result, he's long suffering. And so it's like, I think the author of Ben Sira like understood what's going on in that ancient biblical text. And so Idol Killer says the book of Ben Siracha is pretty spicy. Yes, absolutely. Very, very spicy book of the Bible. But all right. Well, with that, we'll close us out. And any questions or comments, put that down below or start a thread on the God is Open Facebook group. Thank you for listening.